So next we're going to use ExoPlayer. So essentially the concept is still the same. So we have a view, and then on top of that, we're going to put a player. So in this case here, instead of what we had before, I'm going to have an ExoPlayer in which we're going to be playing something. Now, what is this ExoPlayer? Well, ExoPlayer is some sort of a better version of a media player for video, mainly, which allows for more consistent experience, better extensibility, and a lot of different things that we can actually access without having to do a lot of work. So it is what I call a media player 2.0 version. So a better way of playing media, specifically playing videos. Most importantly, the ExoPlayer core libraries are only available for all devices that are running Android 4.1 API level 16. So if you are running anything below level 16, API level 16, then it's not going to work. Luckily for us, most of our apps that we're going to be building are going to be higher level than level 16. Let's go and see how we can put together our ExoPlayer here. One thing to keep in mind is that the ExoPlayer is not included with Android SDK, so it's a separate open source library. But the good news is this library is very important. In fact, it's so important that Android people themselves, meaning the developers and people who create Android apps or create the Android libraries, SDK and so forth, they actually use it. In fact, I believe that YouTube uses ExoPlayer to stream videos that we can actually watch on our devices. So it's pretty cool. It's a big deal. So here we go to the GitHub Google ExoPlayer page. This is where we can actually see the project itself, so the ExoPlayer project. The beauty about having this GitHub link here is that it gives us some sort of a documentation that we can read and learn more about it and how to add to our application. So if you go at the bottom here, it gives you the information description, what ExoPlayer is, what it does, and all sort of great thing. Of course, there's the guides that you can follow along. And most importantly, what we want is what we can do in order for us to add this library in our Gradle, in our build.gradle, so that we can use it in our projects. Okay, there are a lot of dependencies we can add depending on what it is that we want to do with in our project, right? So at this point here, we just want I want the ExoPlayer core and ExoPlayer UI for user interface. Okay, so at this point here, if I copy, let's see, let me copy all of these and then I can change once we get to our project. In fact, I already created a new project here, something that you can very well do, and I called it Play Video XOP, as such, like that. You can call it whatever you want. But now, most importantly, we're going to go to our Gradle here scripts. Let's go to Gradle app, this one here, click there. And where we have dependencies, right at the bottom here, I'm going to just copy and paste what I just got. Now, in fact, this is not going to work quite well because we just have the x-axis there, right? This is supposed for us to put the actual numbers there. Now, I'm just going to put something here like 8 and 2, okay, and put also 8 and 2. Also here, 8, and 2. Now we don't need this dash here, so I'm going to get rid of that. We just need those two modules, those two libraries there. So we have these ExoPlayer core 2.8.2 and UI with the same version. Now these numbers here don't really matter that much because depending on when you're watching this video, they may have changed, right? But that doesn't matter because again, our IDE will always have our back. It will tell us if we're wrong. All right, let me go ahead and sync and see if it all goes well. There we go. Looks like we are good to go. Very nice. Build successful. All right, let's get out of here. All is good. Now coming back to our documentation here, like I said, you can scroll down here, read more about our ExoPlayer. But what we really needed, we already got it from here, which are these dependencies here. Okay, let's get out of here. Back to our project. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, let's go to our activity main here. So this is all going to change because I'm going to just actually make this a frame instead of these full constraints. So I'm say frame layout like that, and it gives us a frame layout. I don't need a text view. So now what I'm going to do, in fact, let me get rid of all of this. Very good. Inside here, what I'm going to do, course, give more space there. So inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke the actual view, the actual ExoPlayer view, right? We have that capability now because we've added the dependencies. So if I open my tag and I write Exo as such, there's all different ExoPlayers view here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get one here. So there's C. Let's get this one. I'm going to get this one player 2. Go like that. So the width here, I'm just going to say it's going to be match parent, and the height is going to be match parent as well. So it's going to just take care of the entire view. Okay, there we go. And the moment you do that, look at that. It gives us the actual nice user interface. Very cool, right? So we have the play, the forward, next, and skip, and all that stuff. In fact, I can just come here and close it like that. So I don't need to have all of that. Very good, because we're not going to add anything inside of our view at this point. All right, so next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to add an ID. We call this player view like that. So we're done with our user interface. So inside of main activity here, I'm going to go ahead and say private and create an instance of our player view like this. Notice this has to be from Exo namespace. Hit enter, call this player view, and invoke a simple ExoPlayer, right? This is in the class we're going to be using to actually invoke our player. Let's just go ahead and call this player as such. Inside of our own create, we're going to set up our player view. So player view, like that, find by player view. Next, we are going to override one of the lifecycle methods, the onStart. So the onStart, when everything is ready to go, here we're going to go ahead and call our player, the simple ExoPlayer. I'm going to instantiate it. I'm going to say it's equal to ExoPlayer factory dot new simple instance. So we need to create the actual instance for us to start creating, to start play. There's a lot of things here, but we're just going to pass this, the context, and we're going to pass new default track selector. Okay, now, what is this new default track selector? So the default track selector allows us to configure our ExoPlayer. So that's what we're doing here. We need to pass this as in the context and the default configurations. Okay. So next, what we need to do is we need to associate the ExoPlayer with the player view. So I'm going to say player view dot set player. I remember this, and then we pass our player as such. Now, the next thing we need to do here is to actually create the data source. So where and what is it that we're going to be playing? Now, I've already created a link again here. This is a link where we're going to play our file from. This is the same file we've seen before, a video. I'm going to just paste it all in here so you can see. Okay, you have access to that. Okay, so it's going to be just an MP4 on my website where we're going to be streaming it from. So at this point, I'm going to say data source. We need to get the Android Google ExoPlayer. There's two data sources. This one here, but what we want is that one there, upstream. Okay, very important, because if we get the first one, that's for Java SQL, and we don't want that. All right, so namespaces are very important. We want to invoke the factory interface there. Call this data source factory. I'm going to say is equal to new default data source factories like that. And this one, I'm going to pass this as well. And I'm going to pass util.get user agent. I'm going to pass then this and get string r.string.app name. So what we're doing here is we're producing an instance through which media data is going to be loaded. Once we have that instance, our data source factory there, we'll then have to call a media source, source like that. Call video source, that's what we are looking to add, is equal to new extractor media source like that. We're going to invoke the factory again, .factory, and I'm going to have to pass our data source factory. And then I'm going to go ahead and say create media source, at which point I'm going to pass our media. So for our media file here, because we know we're getting from a remote place, right? So we are going to pass here a URI. So the URI class allows us to get the URL. We can then parse everything through that URL so that we can actually get what we want, which is in this case, it's going to be a video. So I'm going to say URI.parse. Look at that. We can pass a string. What string are we going to pass? Well, folks, this is the string we're going to pass, right? The string to our link. Paste it all like that, and we should be good. Not so fast. First of all, we need to go back to our manifest here because, as you know, we need to invoke the internet permission here because we are trying to get something from the internet. So use this permission, internet, like that. That's something that's easy to forget. Okay, very good. At this point here, we have, of course, our video source. Everything is good. So what is left to do is just to call the player and invoke the prepare and pass our video source. Okay, just like that. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. If all goes well, we should see something at least. Oh, we have an issue. Let's see what's going on. So class cast exception, Google ExoPlayer player control cannot be cast to Google player view. Let's click on Java 26. It looks like our player view, which we are instantiating, or we are getting the player view XML here. Oh, there we go. That's the problem, right? So this is player controller, not player view. So I'm going to just change that to player view. There we go. Now it's much better. So this is just going to be a player view, and which will allow us to hopefully play the view or the video. Let's save this and run. Honest mistake, of course. There we go. So it looks like everything is working perfectly. Look at that. We have our controls. We even have the time. That's 8 seconds total. Let's play. Look at that. I can pause. Keep playing. Can skip a little bit to the end, which at this point we can go back and play again. And there we go, folks. We were able to use ExoPlayer to play a video. And look how cool this is. It knows how to handle the video that needs to be played, right? You notice that in the previous video, when we used the surface view, we had to do a little bit more work to get things working. But also you notice that even the video was stretched out. Of course, we could have changed that. But you notice using the ExoPlayer, it knows exactly what to do. It knows how to crop things together so that it looks really good. On top of that, we get all of these controls that are given for us for free because we just used the ExoPlayer. Okay? There it is. And just like that, we were able to create a video player using ExoPlayer. Now, one thing that we need to pay attention here is that we need to actually pass a player view inside, not a player controller that we had before. That's very important. A little mistake there, but at least we're able to solve that mistake. And also, if we are getting from the internet, meaning that if we're getting our video here streaming from the internet, we have to pass the URI to parse it, this link here, so that it's actually something that when we create media source here, it knows exactly how to go and fetch the video, right? So once we have that, we invoke the player, right, which we set inside of our player view, and we just say prepare and pass our video source. I can say player dot and say add. For instance, I can add analytics listener, I can add text output, video listener. There's all sort of things that we can do. In fact, if you come to this website here, to this link, let's go back down this way. Inside of our ExoPlayer GitHub there is a few references. There are a few references that you should take a look at. So if you look at this developer guide, it will take you exactly here where you can read more about using this media player. So I would suggest, if you're thinking about creating an application that would play videos and so forth, I'll suggest to spend some time reading and figuring out how to really do the things properly. Now you notice most of these instructions are the ones that we saw previously in GitHub, of course, but there's more to that, right? They even show us how to create the player, attaching to the view, exactly what we just did, preparing the player, right? Just what we did. And we can also control the player, in which case we can actually add event listeners and so forth. But one thing we must never forget, of course, is to release all the footprint. So if I come outside of our on start, I'm gonna go ahead and say on stop. I'm gonna override this as well. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna say player view dot set player to null, just to get rid of it from memory. And then I'm gonna say player dot release, and I'm gonna make player null, so just to get rid of the footprint, like that. Okay, and we're done. This is always what you should do when we're dealing with videos and audio and resources that we're using in our project. All right, folks, there we go. Very simple, and we gain a lot here because we're able to play our video and we have all these controls and life is good. All right, so now that we have this knowledge, what I want you to do is perhaps to find projects where you can use this knowledge here, how to use Exo or Media Player, and figure out when to use the surface view, what are the pros and cons, and when to use ExoPlayer, right? So that is the job of a developer, really, is that you have all these tools and now you have to figure out what goes with what. So when do you use one tool or one library over the other? Okay, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you next time.